Okay. All right. I'm very excited for our second guest speaker in the rest of our semester speaker series. If I get the name right, it's Brian McLucky.
Yeah.
And he's going to talk to us today about Buddhism. So our class is Global Cultures in America. It's a predominantly, we think, Christian nation. A lot of Caucasians are the majority. And we think that Buddhism is a Far Eastern religion. We think that it's a religion. Maybe it's not even a religion. So my point is, with Global Cultures, with the class, and with our guest speakers, what we have to come to understand is that a lot of our assumptions may be accurate, they may be false, and so we can get some knowledge from the guest speaker, knowledge that we don't have already. Because the reason we come to the university is to learn new stuff. And I don't know much about Buddhism at all. So I'm very excited to get a little bit of new knowledge from our guest speaker today, Brian McLucky.
Homage to the Blessed One, the Exalted One, the Fully Enlightened One. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Great to be here, it really is. What I just did, first of all, this is a mindfulness bell, and it's used in the tradition that I practice, which is the Plum Village tradition or the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition of Zen Buddhism. It's used for a couple purposes. One is to bring us back to the present moment. We'll talk about the present moment several times today. That's a focus, a key teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh, living in the present moment. So it's a reminder for us to whatever we're doing, when we hear the sound of the bell, we call it a bell, to bring your mind and your experience back to the present moment. And the way you do that is to return to the experience of your breathing. The breath is something we always have with us, and something that's perfect for attending to, for attention and concentration. It's always there, and it's a bridge between our body and our mind. So when you hear the bell, bring your attention to your breath. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can pay attention to the in and out of the breath at the tip of the nose. And you pay attention to the sensations the breath goes in and out. Or you can pay attention to your abdomen, rising and lowering with your breath. Another way to do it is to follow the breath all the way in and pay attention to your abdomen, rising. And the idea is to put your attention on your breath. And what typically happens, and we're going to do a little meditation today too, a brief period of meditation. What typically happens when you put your attention on the breath is you get something called monkey mind. Your thoughts are jumping all over because every day we have monkey mind. You guys as students should be particularly used to monkey mind. You have so much on your mind and so many things confronting you. And the idea, one of the ideas of meditation, and one of the ideas of bringing our attention back to our breath, is to slow our thinking down. The emphasis in Buddhism is not on thinking. The emphasis is on experience. It's not on analyzing and learning and memorizing things, although that happens. And that's a part of it. That's a part of gaining wisdom. Doing those things, analyzing and reading and doing research, would be considered skillful means in Buddhism, but not the purpose of the practice. The purpose of the practice is to provide calm and insight, experiential insight, not the insight we get from reading books, but the insight we get from living and from experiencing our bodies and our emotions and our minds in the world. So, when I invite the bell, and that's what we say, that's what we call it, when we invite or sound the bell, we call it inviting it because we don't want to say strike it, that's violent. Buddhism is also a very non-violent practice, and one that emphasizes compassion and kindness. So when I invite the bell, what I'll do is click it like that first, and that is referred to as waking the bell up. And that's kind of give people a warning that it's coming. And then I'll sound. So I'm going to do that a few times today. So whenever you hear that, return to your breath, return to the present moment. And we'll do that for a minute or so. We'll do that each time. Pay attention to how it feels when you do that. Pay attention to how it feels to your body. In Buddhism, there are 4 foundations of mindfulness. Body, feelings, mind, and object of the mind. And those are 4 things that we can pay attention to when we return to the present moment. We might put our attention on our breath lightly, 25% of our attention perhaps, and also attend to how our body feels, to what happens with our mind, to what happens with our feelings. There's a story of, in the scriptures, the Buddhist scriptures, the sutras, after the Buddha was awakened, that he was walking along the road. I may not get the details exactly right, but this is the idea. He was walking somewhere and someone saw him, and it appeared to that person that he almost lit up. He was so calm and serene, it was noticeable. And the person came up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, what kind of being are you? What kind of man are you? Are you a god?" The person was so struck by his calmness, his concentration, and his being in the present moment. And all the Buddha said was, "No, I'm awake." And that's another goal of Buddhism and meditation, is for us to wake up. I had a bunch of notes, but I just launched in here, so I may jump around a little bit. But wake up to what? Wake up to the way things are, the way things really are. Because what happens in our lives, we interpret, we perceive things, right? But our minds interpret it and judge them and analyze them and pick them apart. And so then we project onto the world the way we think it is. So awaken to the way things really are. And how are they? First of all, they're impermanent. Everything is impermanent, won't last. All our loved ones, this can be depressing, but it isn't in the long run depressing. All our loved ones, everything we have, all our achievements will be gone one day. Everything goes away. Everything's impermanent. And probably 300 years from now, there won't be many people that remember us, if anybody. That's the way things are. Well, there's some good news about that. And we'll uncover that as we go along here. So things are impermanent. Another aspect of reality, the way things really are, is there is no self. There's no enduring. And this is the way early Buddhism talked about it. This is part of their language when they said self. Use the word self. There's another way to look at it today in terms of language. But there is no enduring, permanent entity called a self. If you were to cut a person apart, or that's a little blurry, let's say look with an imaging machine at a person, there's nothing in there that you can see that says self. There's not a little person in there, or a black box. We're made up of a number of non-self elements. And so there is no enduring self. The good news to that is that what we are made up of is everything. We exist, each of us, because of because of the universe, because of what exists in the universe. And so literally we are part of each other. We're all made up of the same energy, vibrating energy and particles from the earth and the universe. That's what we consist of. And Thich Nhat Hanh, my teacher, or the teacher for the group that we have, calls that interbeing. And that is one of the primary characteristics of existence. Everything is inter-are, he says. We all are made up of non-self elements. One of his examples that he does is he says, this piece of paper here, it's not, it's empty. Empty. It's empty of a consistent self, of a enduring self, or it's not a piece of paper. It's made up of non-paper elements. It's made up of rain, sunshine, the guy that cut the tree down, people that ran the mill, the wood. It's made up of all those things. Without any of those things, take any of those things away, this paper wouldn't exist. So that's the good news. Yes, things are impermanent. If they weren't impermanent, we wouldn't exist. So those are some of the basic Buddhist beliefs. The other thing I did when I started the chant was a very common chant, and it's homage to the Blessed One, Exalted One, the Fully Enlightened One, meaning the Buddha. The Buddha was a man. He wasn't a god. He didn't claim to be a god. He was a man who was awakened. His name was, and you guys may know some of this, these stories about the Buddha are getting more well known in the Buddha story is, but his name was Siddhartha Gautama. And he was born in the 5th century BCE, where present-day Nepal is. And he was born into a rich family. He was a prince. And it was prophesied when he was young that he would either become a great leader, a great politician, kind of like the president of this, or he would be a great spiritual leader and lead many people to enlightenment and awakening. Well, his father was really much more interested in him becoming a politician, and all the achievement that would mean and what it would mean for the family. And so his father sheltered him from the world. And these stories are, parts of them are myth. There are probably some grains of truth in here, but the myth, just because they're myth doesn't mean they're not true in terms of what they tell us. They sheltered him, and he had food, anything he wanted, dancing girls, all his needs met, and they tried to keep him from seeing the real world. And so at some point, though, he got married and he had a child. And then at some point, he got interested in and wondered about the outside world, what goes on out there. So he asked his charioteer to sneak away one night, and they rode. And he saw all those things that we know so well. He saw suffering, poverty, death, old age, people beside the road, wasting away, violence. And he said to his charioteer, "This is terrible. This happened to me." And the charioteer said, "Absolutely, it happens to all of us. Old age and dying and all these things." So another thing he saw was a recluse meditating. Meditation is an ancient art. It was around way before the Buddhist time. He saw the recluse meditating, and that looked pretty good to him. He was really calm, the recluse was. He didn't seem to be shaken by things. So Buddha, Siddhartha, at that point, he wasn't Buddha yet, went back and left his wife and child, and cut off his hair and put on rags, and went to live the ascetic life in the forest. And he studied under many, many teachers. And he accomplished everything under all those teachers. In fact, one of the teachers wanted him to take over because he was so good at meditating and developing calm. But the Buddha was not, Siddhartha was not satisfied with that. He was looking for an answer to the suffering of the world, to the suffering of death and destruction and aging. And so he left that group of people and went and sat at the foot of a tree near a river and said, "I'm going to sit here and meditate until I can come to some sort of understanding or some sort of awareness that will help set me free from some of this suffering." So he sat there all night. As dawn broke, he achieved awakening. He achieved an awareness of the way things are. And at first he thought to himself, "There's no way I can teach this." The gods, this is part of the myth, the gods came down and circled around him and said, "You've got to teach this to the world. There's so much in need of this." And he was skeptical at first. He didn't want to because he felt that people would not hear it, that people would not, that it was hard. It was difficult. And that people, that wouldn't be, effective. But eventually he decided that he would, because the message was so strong and so powerful. That's when he became the Buddha, when he became awakened at the foot of that tree.
May the sound of this bell penetrate deep into the cosmos. Even in the darkest spots, living beings are able to hear it clearly, so that all suffering in them cease, understanding comes to their heart, and they transcend the path of sorrow and death. The universal Dhamma door is already open. The sound of the rising tide is heard clearly. The miracle happens. A beautiful child appears in the heart of the lotus flower. One single drop of this compassionate water is enough to bring back the refreshing spring to our mountains. Listening to the bell, I feel the afflictions in me begin to dissolve. My mind calm, my body relax. The smile is warm on my lips. Following the sound of the bell, my breath brings me back to the safe island of mindfulness. In the garden of my heart, the flowers of peace bloom beautifully.
So what did the Buddha discover? Why was there so much joy? And why did the gods want him to teach? Well, he discovered the way, the path. And at this point in history, this wasn't a religion, it was a path. When the Buddha, at this time in history, people often think that Hinduism existed then, and it really didn't. Hinduism didn't happen until later. At that point, there was a Brahmanism, where there were Brahmins that, like in the time of Christ, happened in the time of Christ, were pretty much in charge of the religious rituals and so forth. And so the way the spiritual life kind of passed through them. And the Buddha kind of, as Jesus did later, kind of shattered that. And the path consists of the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Four Noble Truths are life is unsatisfactory. Sometimes you hear the word dukkha, which means suffering, and people sometimes get the wrong idea that Buddhism is all about suffering, and that's not true. Life is unsatisfactory, and what that means is that deeply underneath our life, all of us, if we're honest about it, there's a sense of dis-ease, a sense of unease, and a sense of unsatisfactoriness. That somehow we aren't meeting our goals, somehow we're not getting what we need or want. We're not having enough fun, maybe. We all know that those we love will die one day, as we will. So there's an unsatisfactory nature deep down. Some people won't admit that. They won't get to that level. But that's what he was saying. And he said, the reason is ignorance. The reason is ignorance. Ignorance about the way things really are. We try and make things permanent in our minds. We perceive ourselves as a self that is somehow different than, I'm different than you. And you're different somehow from each other, uniquely. And there's an enduring self. We believe that. And that creates a lot of problems, a lot of anger, a lot of competition, a lot of conflict and so forth. And the third noble truth is, wait a minute, just left a little piece out there. The second one, yes, ignorance is the reason. The other part of it is that we grasp onto things. That's another part of our ignorance, is we grasp onto things. We don't want them to go away. We want to have fun and good things and pleasure. And we don't want to have things that are unhappy and suffering. And we grab one and push the other away. And so clinging and grasping is a big reason also that life is unsatisfactory. The third one is that by seeing clearly and not attaching so much, we can awaken by seeing clearly the way things are, that things are impermanent, but that we're all connected. And one thing I like about the video, the Great Bell Chant, is for me, it's a spiritual video in the sense that it shows the wonder, the Garden of Eden that we live in, that we aren't fully awake to. So we can awaken and live in that Garden of Eden. And then the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is a way of living that helps us to awaken. Wise view, wise thinking, wise mindfulness, wise speech, wise action, wise diligence, concentration, and wise livelihood. We're not going to go over each of those. That would take quite a while. But basically the idea is there's a way of living. All those things interact, and there's a way of living that supports and helps you awaken to the wonder of things the way they are, and develops compassion. And as I mentioned, the three strategies we typically use are aversion, attachment, or we ignore it. We either attach to the good things, push the bad things away, or ignore things. And that just doesn't get us there. Okay. So the threefold path to awakening then is ethics, living an ethical life, meditation, which develops calm and insight. Another way of putting that is mind cultivation. Meditation is one of the methods of doing that. And developing wisdom out of those things. Wisdom, knowing the way things are. And being able, wisdom is the idea that in your daily life, knowing the way things are, you can live in such a way that supports that mind and doesn't go against it. Let's talk a little bit about, so that's a kind of a very quick capsule of the Buddha. Buddha means the awakened. Let's talk a little bit about Thich Nhat Hanh and his movement. Anybody here at Thich Nhat Hanh? Anybody heard that name? No? Okay. He's pretty popular. You go in any bookstore and there's a whole little row under religion. He's written a lot of stuff. And he's a wonderful, wonderful person. He's now in his early 90s and he just had a massive stroke. And he's recovering from that. But every year, even in his upper 80s and early 90s, he travels all over the world, holding retreats. I am part of and practice with something called the Bay Area Community of Mindful Living. And we meet every Wednesday at Unity in Bay City. And we're part of about, I'd say 600-700 groups worldwide, local sanghas. Sangha, the name Sangha means group that meets together to support each other's practice. And we meet every Wednesday, and what we do basically, 6:30 we have a tea, just to kind of get together and talk, and then we silently go into the meditation room where we hold meditation, and we have an altar. Even though we don't worship Buddha as a god, we use the statues that we use of Buddha as a symbol of the ability to awaken in all of us, because that's another belief the Buddha had, is that we all have Buddha nature. Every one of us can awaken and live an awakened life. And then we typically, what we do is we meditate for about 25 minutes or so, and then we might have a what we call a Dharma talk, or listen to a tape, or watch a video or something. And then we do walking meditation. There's also a form of meditation called walking meditation. And when you do it indoors, it's very slow. And when we first started to do it, we felt weird about it. I did. I thought, well, you know, I've never seen anybody doing this in our society, really. And I thought it's kind of strange, but now I love it. And it's a slow meditation where basically you take a small step with each in-breath, you know, a little bit like this. Mental silence, we call it mental silence, because it's a silence with purpose. Bring us inward, bring us back to the present moment. And the focus is on your foot, touching the earth, and the sensation of your foot. Some people pay attention to the breath. But it's a very powerful practice, and it's thousands of years old as well. The Buddha did walking meditation. And then we have something called Dharma sharing, which is a very nice, powerful experience because the emphasis is on deep listening. Because in our society, so often when people are discussing or talking, one person's thinking of what they're going to say while the other person's talking. Listening isn't a real well-developed skill for us. And so the way we do it is when a person wants to talk, they bow and the group bows to them. They talk about what they want to talk about, usually about their practice or struggle that they're having. Sometimes it's personal, a lot of times it isn't. And then when they're done, they bow and the group bows back to them. And there's no cross-talk. The rule is you can't talk directly to the other person during this time. And there's no, you know, getting involved in a discussion about the merits of something or anything like that. You just listen and accept what the person has to say. It's very powerful. People feel really listened to and really accepted. And then we end the meeting typically with a loving kindness meditation. And this is where one of the things Thich Nhat Hanh has done has merged may not be the word, he's altered his practice in some ways that has made it very amenable to us, the people in the West. And we've done a little bit of that because I grew up a Christian, and I remember prayer meetings where people prayed for other people that they had concerns for. And so we've kind of taken a Buddhist practice and combined it with a Christian practice. And at the end, we have a silent meditation where people can beforehand bring people's names up that they're worried about, people who are sick or struggling. And then we say that people can pray silently if they want, or they can just send them good energy. Think about them and send them their good thoughts. And so that's our meeting. As I said, there's several hundreds of these groups all over the world, lots of them in the United States. There's several of them in Michigan, and that we get together with once in a while. So it's a Buddhist-based practice. However, Thich Nhat Hanh is very flexible and accepting. I don't know, I've already lost track of what I've told you. Let's see, he was born in 1926, Thich Nhat Hanh was. He became a novice monk at 16. He was born in Vietnam, and so he was around when the Vietnam War was occurring. And he formed a youth group that helped bombed out villages, rebuild the village. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to suffering. And he's walked the walk. His main idea of practice is that by living in the here and now, that we can awaken by living in the here and now consistently and using things like meditation to develop our concentration and change some of our views and see the way things really are and live that way. And so much of his focus is on the present moment and activities that bring us back to the present moment. This is the man himself here. Sorry about the quality.
You don't manifest in this way, and then you manifest in that way, like the cloud and the snow. So if you get that, you are no longer, and that is your supernatural power. Already, if you have non-fear, and then you are quite different from other people, because they are subjected to fear of dying, fear of being nothing. But with non-fear in you, with that deep wisdom in you, you become supernatural. You are no longer immortal, but you are not. You don't need to be a god, because a god is supposed not to be a human being. So to say that the Buddha has a supernatural power, that is true also. But he does not need to be a god in order to have that. He needs only to have freedom, freedom from wrong views, and freedom from fear. It's like birth and death are like waves, and you are riding on the waves, birth and death, and you go without fear. It's a wonderful. That is supernatural power. And the Buddha did not encourage his disciples to perform miracles. He said the greatest miracle is the miracle of teaching and transforming people. And that is a miracle that he do every day. Buddhist meditation is the practice of looking deeply into the nature of reality. Because if we don't have enough concentration, mindfulness, we cannot look deeply. We can be deceived by what we see and by what we hear. It's like science. Science is also an attempt to look more deeply. You look at the sky and you see a star. You believe very strongly that the star is there. It may be that the star has already disappeared 1,000 years of life ago. And that is why you can be deceived by what you see and what you hear. And science helps us to be more careful. And Buddhism does the same. If you look deeply, and then you can be free from wrong perceptions, from illusions. Like the illusion that life is permanent. There is a permanent soul inhabiting each living being, these kind of things. The Buddha did have teachers. He followed a number of teachings, and he practiced with communities. And he had made some progress in his path of looking deeply. But he realized finally that this kind of realization was not enough for his liberation, and that is why he had to continue by himself. And sitting at the foot of the Bodhi tree, he was able to make a breakthrough. He discovered the nature of interdependence, the nature of interbeing. He discovered the way of looking deeply, and he could transcend his idea of birth and death, coming and going, being and non-being, and he was completely liberated from suffering. The happiness, the salvation of the Buddha is possible thanks to Mahaprajna, great understanding. And when you want great understanding, you are no longer afraid of being born, of dying. And that is why we want to share your insight and your practice with other people. When you think of the Buddha, you think of the young man who was born in Kapilavastu, who practiced many years in forest, and who went around India to give a teaching. But that is only a portion of the Buddha. Because the moment when the Buddha began to build the Sangha, he began to transfer himself to the Sangha. And many disciples, monastic like lay, they continue the Buddha. And you have to see the Buddha in the Sangha. You have to be able to see the Buddha in the Dharma. And if you have not seen the Dharma and the Sangha, you have not seen the Buddha. And the Dharma is available in the here and the now. The Sangha is also available in the here and the now. You do not have to go to India in order to see the Buddha. If we believe the Buddha is a God, that can bestow on us the things we want, and then it's not the Buddha. The Buddha is a human being who has a deep capacity of understanding and growing. And having Mahakaruna, great compassion, Maitri, great love, Mahaprajna, great understanding, he can perform miracles. Understanding people is a miracle. And it is described that the Buddha is one who understands the world. Lokavidu, it means understand in the world.
So, stopping and looking deeply is another practice that Thich Nhat Hanh teaches and focuses. He says that we're running. We're either running away from something, running towards something most of the time. And so he encourages us to use the practice to stop running and look deeply in the here and now at what we have. He says we have everything necessary to be happy right this moment, and to be and to have joy and to be awakened. And so he encourages us to stop running. Achievement is good. It's a skillful means. Hard work and achievement is good. But to become attached to it, attached so that it becomes attached to your self-worth and your happiness, that creates a problem. But he says stop and look deeply into things. Practically speaking, one of the things I do is sometimes during my day I will slow down. That's a big part of it. Because I used to walk really fast every day. Sometimes I'll consciously just walk more slowly and look deeply at the trees and think about them. Think about a tree. That's a phenomenon. And what a wonder it is. Or flowers. Or humans, a baby. So that's a big part of this. It's a happy practice. It's a joyful practice. It's not about so much about suffering. And Buddha says, Thich Nhat Hanh says, without mud, you can't have a lotus flower. So even though the practice reduces suffering in our life, suffering is inevitable. It's going to happen. And if we know how to use suffering and accept it, that's where our joys grow from the mind. I got more preaching than expected. Yeah, but this stuff is so powerful for me. It really, when I talk about it, it's a deep thing. So the practices, the core practices that Thich Nhat Hanh recommends, and his practice, by the way, is a Sangha-based practice. It's not a monk-based practice. He has 2 or 3 centers in the world where there are monks in residence. But for the most part, the biggest part of the practice is Sangha-based. The Buddha said that the most important thing in the path is good friends that support the path, support the kind of life you want to live. And so it's a lay practice group. Our group is a lay practice group. What that means is we have no ordained teachers or monks with us. I'm an aspirant in something called the Order of Interbeing, which is a group of people that aren't monks. They're lay practitioners who have committed to the practice at a deep level. And usually you'll find 1 or 2 of those people in every community of mindful living. But I've already kind of told you what we do in our meeting, and Thai is the nickname for Thich Nhat Hanh. It means teacher. His core practice is noble silence, I talked about, sitting meditation, walking meditation, Dharma sharing, and awareness of the breath, and coming back to the present moment and living in the present moment. So I meandered, but that is the basic information. One other practice is gathas. Those are like short poems, and he used them when he was training, meaning Thai, throughout the day, because the practice is to be mindful throughout the day, not just when you're meditating. When you leave here, be mindful of your steps as you walk out, and be mindful once you get outside of the feeling of the wind on your face and your surroundings and the plants and the buildings, and live in the present moment. Don't let your mind go running off thinking about the next class or something you have to do or something that's happening tonight. Keep focused on the present moment. Let's do a little bit of meditation. I think we might show another video. I'm going to sound the bell. And when I do, please, get in a comfortable location or posture, feet on the ground. I see a couple people are real comfortable, and that's okay. Put your hands usually either here or here, one on top of the other. Try and keep your head level. Although I was just at a retreat where the guy leading the retreat, I looked up at one time during meditation. So it's sometimes hard to do. We keep your head level and just relax. And you can shut your eyes if you want. If you don't want to, you can leave them open, but kind of half open, and focus at something in the floor or something in front of you. People do it both ways, with eyes shut and eyes open. And then when I sound the bell, you come back to your breath and pay attention to your breath. And we're going to do this for 5 minutes. And just pay attention. Don't be judgmental with yourself, because you're going to get a ton of thoughts coming in. Just return your attention to your breath. Again, once you have those thoughts, just keep gently bringing your attention back. And it happens to all of us, even people who have been meditating for a long time. Sometimes we'll have to bring our breath back again and again. But don't get judgmental. Don't say to yourself, I can't do this, or this is stupid, or whatever. Just accept what we're doing with this. Part of meditation is we are training ourselves to do this at times other than when we're meditating. And by this, I mean accepting our thoughts and just letting them pass through us, because they're just electrical impulses. They don't have an existence in and of themselves. The thoughts are like clouds in the sky, passing through the sky. And so just let them go. Don't grab onto them, but don't get down on yourself. Okay? The way we usually end our meetings is by reading this. The day is ending, and our life is one day shorter. Let us look carefully at what we have done. Let us practice diligently, putting our whole heart into the path of meditation. Let us live deeply each moment and in freedom, so that time does not slip away meaninglessly. Any questions or comments? That's all I have. Nothing? Yeah.
So when I was 19 years old, a girl broke up with me, and I was still involved with suffering. So because I wanted to get rid of it, I looked for books that dealt with suffering, which actually led me to a book when I was young about Zen Buddhism. And when I was reading about it, there's this quote that I colored up, and it's still laid with me. There's a few things that I took with me from the book, but there's one that really stuck with me, and it said, "All of the true Zen masters are dead." What does that mean?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that. You probably have to know more about the context and stuff. But another Zen saying is, if you meet Buddha on the road, kill him. Zen is really about the fact that we all have Buddha nature and that we primarily become awakened through self-experience and not through relying on things outside of ourselves. And so my guess is that's what they were getting at in that something along those lines, that the idea that you have to kind of do it on your own, that they're not about study so much. And the reason that happened was Buddhism came from northern India and first went to China. Bodhidharma took it to China. And shortly thereafter, it went into Southeast Asia and Vietnam and Korea. And when Bodhidharma ended up in China, this is before Zen was a movement. When he ended up in China, one of the things he discovered was it was a real academic picture going on there in terms of Buddhist practice. Buddhism had been there for many hundreds of years, but it was really academic study, and people weren't practicing. And so that influenced Zen very early on to talk about, the going through the suffering. As painful as it is, that's where the lotus comes from. It's going through the suffering of the breakup. Nobody else, no Zen master can take it away from you. You have to go through it yourself. So I think that seems to make sense to me based upon what you're saying. Although I don't, I'm not sure. But, yeah. Anything else? Yes.
So thank you for coming. That was a very great presentation. So many things. But I'll just ask one for your opinion on this. It's very attractive way of life. With a lot of peace. It seems like it would benefit a lot of people to practice Buddhism. Feel like tranquility. You're speaking on everything and balance and so on. But it's not very popular. Some of the popular behaviors and values in American culture, especially, are violent and somewhat cannibalistic to livelihoods. So, having that sort of table set for you, why do you think Buddhism is not extremely popular? It's a very, very beneficial and attractive way of life at its roots.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not an expert, but I'll give an opinion. It is getting more popular. It's probably more popular in the West now than it ever has been, but you're right. And maybe it'll take a while to get there. But it goes against so many of our deeply ingrained cultural, I think, norms in our world, in the Western world. We're so individualistic and achievement oriented, and Buddhism is no self. No self, and achievement is seen as a skillful means, but the emphasis isn't on achieving worldly money, and all those things. It isn't on in fame. It isn't on those things. In fact, it says that those things can get in the way. There's a story about the Buddha who's walking with some disciples and some of the monks. And see, there's my Christian heritage coming back in there when I use the word disciples. Some of the monks, and this guy came running by real frantically, and he said, "I have 10 cows, and they've gotten out. Have you seen them anywhere? Have they come by here?" And he was really distraught. And the Buddha said, "We haven't seen them. We might try over there." And the guy left, and the Buddha turned around to his monks and said, "Be thankful you don't have cows." So, I think it goes, the basic practice of it is kind of not what that's my opinion anyway, not what our culture is about. I mean, it really, it goes against it. It also isn't an easy practice, really. It's because practicing every day, meditating, and it's such an individualistic thing in terms of the motivation to do it. That's why it's helpful to do it with a Sangha. And meditation isn't easy. It sounds easy. It sounds great and easy, but to keep your mind, to develop real concentration and real calm is tough. It's very, it takes some real effort. So, I think, those things. If anybody is interested in our group, I brought a few cards. I can leave a few up here if anybody wants one. How many might be interested in a card? Okay, all right. I'll leave some here. And ever the salesman here. Also, what did I do? You may have left out. I thought I put it. There's a retreat in the fall, a mindfulness retreat. I'll leave a couple of these here too. If anybody is interested in a mindfulness retreat, it's down in Lapeer County in Almont at a retreat center over a weekend. And basically we meditate, and it's open to anybody. If you've never meditated before, that's okay. There's lots of supportive people to help and that kind of thing. So thanks for your attention. I enjoyed it very much. You guys were a good group. Thanks a lot.
All right, so it's Tuesday. We have class on Thursday, and we'll dismiss class. There's 5 minutes left, so if anyone has any individual questions that they want to ask Brian, feel free to stop on your way out.